Here we go. Please choose your channel. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the third day of the fourth annual Firstborn and More Home Visiting Symposium. My name is Maya Larsgaard. I'm the training manager for Firstborn and More, which is a promising home visiting model that is right now growing by leaps and bounds. We're really excited about that. And we're so happy to be able to offer this 3-day virtual symposium to all home visitors and early interventionists in the state without cost. And for that, I want to thank Brindle Foundation and Mary Nell Wegner for the generous grant to Firstborn and More that's supporting this work. Thank you also to Naomi Tarrez and Annalie Morales for providing Spanish interpretation for us today. And now I want to introduce, sorry, I was distracted by little things going on, little notifications. I want to introduce our wonderful speaker, Mara Brenner. In case anyone is joining today that wasn't here yesterday, Mara is a national educator, trainer, consultant. She has many years of experience in the fields of psychology and early childhood education. She's trained as a child psychotherapist. She's worked in special education and early intervention, therapeutic preschools, and also in her private practice. So for the symposium, she's focusing on understanding adult behavior in the families you work with, in your colleagues, in everyone around you, including yourself. Lots of people have been commenting that, this is excellent for their work, but that it's also fabulous for all their personal relationships too. So welcome, Mara. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maya. Good morning, everybody. It's day 3. Here we are, our final day. That's either the good news or the bad news. I don't know. It just is. It's good to be here with you all. And we're going to continue our conversation around understanding behavior. Today, sort of combining day 1 and day 2 in terms of attending to secondary trauma. As people are rolling in, I'm just watching who's in the room because there, as I've said every single day, there are people who know everything that I'm about to present. Today in particular, we're talking about secondary trauma. So if the Taos crew is here, I've actually, all of my trainings I've done with the Taos crew, so they could actually literally do this training. And so the invitation for all of you, regardless of your knowledge base about this content, is just to be open to the possibility of hearing something in a new way, maybe hearing something that you already know, but you needed it in this moment. And that if this is new, as I've said every other day, depending on your learning style, do whatever you need to do to attend to the information. If taking notes is helpful for you, please do so. If taking notes makes it hard for you to pay attention, don't take notes. As Maya has said, both days, the recording will be available to people in the future, probably next week or so. So don't worry if you're wanting to capture everything, but if taking notes helps you to stay grounded and present, please do so. So I'm going to get us started. And Maya, do you see the one slide? So our first day that we were together, for those of you who've been here the whole time, you know this, we started off talking about emotional intelligence. And when we're talking about emotional intelligence, we were talking about the awareness of ourselves, the feelings we have, and the how we function in the world. But we were also talking about emotional intelligence in terms of understanding how other people function, sort of understanding not only our behavior, but their behavior. And then yesterday we talked about trauma. We talked about understanding behavior through the lens of trauma, which for the most part, I was talking about the other, right? Like the families we're working with, right? And so today I want to sort of combine that and think about this concept of being providers who are working in the presence of other people's trauma. And so that's what created this particular day's topic, which is preventing secondary trauma whenever possible. So I'm going to start by making my special thank you to Laura Lipsky, who is the person who I feel like I've learned the most from related to secondary trauma. And as I said, if the Taos crew is here, I was literally in the training with them. So some of the stories I might share, you might remember them. If you don't know Laura Lipsky, she's somebody that I would encourage you to get some information about. She's written several books. The book that I'm referring to here is called Trauma Stewardship. You can also just Google her. There's some TED Talks that she does that are really helpful. And her work has really impacted my life significantly. So my first question is anyone in this room alive? That is not a trick question. That's a real question. And the reason why I ask it, and it's sort of a joke, but my belief at this point in time is if anybody is actually alive right now, you're touched by trauma. You're touched by other people's pain and suffering. And I think that's just part of what it means to be alive, is that there are people around us who've experienced some significant pain and suffering. And each one of us might not have experienced trauma, but we are really surrounded by it all the time. And we're going to really jump into this idea of attending to ourselves as people who work and live in the presence of trauma. So I'm going to ask everybody to just take a moment and scan your body as you're sitting there or standing there, however you're with us today. And just notice how you're breathing, notice how your body feels. If you're anything like me and you have allergies right now, your nose is stuffed up, your throat might be scratchy, just notice. And then I'm going to ask you if there's any place where you feel particularly tight or uncomfortable, because I want you to be aware. That's what this is about. And now I'm going to ask you to take a few deep breaths in and a few deep breaths out, just for about 20 seconds. And I'm going to clock it. And don't worry, people can't see you. So just breathe in. And if you can't breathe in with your nose, breathe with your mouth. And then breathe out. Make sure you breathe out. That part's important too. Breathe in. Keep breathing. And breathe out. Breathe in. And if you're not breathing, try breathing. That means you're holding your breath. And then go ahead and just open your eyes. I lied to you. That was 30 seconds, not 20 seconds. And now take a moment and just scan your body. Has anything changed? For some people, when they breathe, their nervous system gets calm and regulated. For other people, when they breathe, they actually feel more anxious because they've been holding on and defending against some of the discomfort that is existing in their lives. And when they stop, they start to feel it. The reason why I wanted to start off with this is because breathing is going to be your best friend in terms of a strategy to manage and be in the presence of other people's pain and suffering. It's a wonderful strategy in general, just to regulate your nervous system. So let's jump into content and let's get clear about what secondary trauma is. Secondary trauma is often referred to as vicarious trauma or compassion fatigue. And for those of you who are familiar with the Alicia Lieberman people at UCSF, they are no longer using the term compassion fatigue. They're using secondary traumatic stress as the term that relates to what we're talking about today. And so secondary trauma occurs when people are indirectly experiencing the pain and suffering of those around them who have experienced trauma. It can result from repeated exposure from distressing details of another person's trauma. And the emotional duress can happen even if you didn't experience the trauma itself. So a lot of people will say, oh, I hear people's stories, but it doesn't bother me. Or it's not mine, it's theirs. What we know is being in the presence of other people's pain and suffering impacts us, whether we're aware of it or not. And my hope is by the end of today, you'll have some more awareness about this. I want to differentiate burnout from secondary traumatic stress. Burnout is something completely different, although the symptoms may feel the same, the signs and symptoms. Burnout is not related to being in the presence of other people's pain and suffering. Burnout is really about an unrelenting workload. Burnout is like, I'm working too much, I have too many things to do. That is a very different impact. It is an impact nonetheless, but it's different than what we're talking about in terms of secondary stress, secondary traumatic stress. So we've got some definitions here. And then I want you to think if there's anybody here in the room who's taking care of an elderly parent or working with abused and neglected children, working within a system that feels unhealthy, surrounded by loss, in regular contact with people who've experienced trauma, involved in any environmental issues. I'll say right now, involved in any political issues, caring for a pet that's been rescued. I name some of these as part of our regular life that has an impact us whether we know it or not. That's very different than somebody who's literally in the world of trauma, right? Like maybe some of you are therapists who work completely and directly with people who've experienced trauma. That's a certain kind of role. But if you have had any kind of contact to people who've experienced loss, I mentioned before my parents, today is the anniversary of my father's death. I took care of my parents for a year and a half. That impacted me. The bottom line about being in the presence of other people's pain and suffering is that it has an impact to our system. Some of us are more aware of it than others. The reality is all of us are affected by being in the presence of pain and suffering, but not all of us will get or experience secondary trauma. So it's really important to distinguish, right? Like yesterday I was saying, let's be clear about what trauma is because people throw that word around and use it in ways that are actually inaccurate, right? Trauma is when one is experiencing a situation where they are overwhelmed and not able to cope, right? That's what trauma is. Secondary trauma isn't just about working in the presence of pain and suffering. It is those of us who experience it a certain way. And so it is the same in terms of overwhelming our capacity to cope, right? The risk for secondary traumatic stress appears to be greater amongst women and also among individuals who are highly empathetic by nature or have unresolved personal trauma. And so each of you are listening to this through your own ears, right? And so just think about this for yourself. Today is a day about you, right? Are you, some of us talk about empathic nature as somebody who's a highly sensitive person, right? And so that means that you feel things more intensely than others, not better or worse, that you feel them stronger. Also, if you've experienced your own trauma and it is unresolved, then you are more likely to experience secondary trauma. The risk of secondary traumatic stress is also higher based on a few other factors. One is dosage. right? Like when I said a minute ago, if you're a therapist who works primarily with people who have experienced trauma, that's high dosage. If you're a home visitor and maybe one family on your caseload has experienced trauma, that's a lower risk. If you're in early intervention and a number of your families are babies are I'm blanking on the term, environmental risk, right? So there might be some more higher level of exposure to trauma. Another factor is your work environment. So if there's stress in the work environment, if there's unclear boundaries or unclear expectations of your work, and then you're working with families who've experienced stress, you are more likely to experience secondary trauma. If you are new to the field, and that's like fewer years in the doing this kind of work, not just new to your job, but because you could have been doing this work for 20 years and new to your job, but new to the field. And also a personal history of trauma and a person who has inconsistent skills around social emotional competencies. And social emotional competencies are the same thing we were talking about Monday in terms of emotional intelligence. So do you have the skills to regulate yourself? Do you have the ability to identify your feelings? And for those who don't quite have those skills yet, they might be at higher risk. And then lacking a supportive process for discussing traumatic events. I think about this in terms of reflective supervision. It is one of the key reasons why we have reflective supervision embedded in home visiting and in early intervention, is because engaging in this work when we are in the presence of other people's pain and suffering, it requires us to be able to talk about it in a way that is meaningful and helpful. Laura Lipsky offers this wonderful quote: "The pain around us can actually change our own psychological and physiological responses, altering our worldview." Do you remember we talked both on Monday and Tuesday that we are hardwired based on relationships and experience? We're hardwired for relationships, and our brains are formed, our neural pathways are created based on relationships and experiences. And so if you are in relationship with people who are experiencing pain and suffering on a regular basis, it literally changes your wiring. It is one of the reasons why these kinds of conversations need to happen, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about it. So here are some signs that stress is impacting you. And I'm just going to ask you, as I have all the time, ask you if you notice yourself in this. Now, many people are going to be able to notice others more quickly than they are able to notice themselves, but today is really about you. So see if you notice yourself. You tend to have feelings of hopeless or helplessness related to the work. Do you have a sense that you can just never do enough? Are you hypervigilant? Do you all of a sudden feel like you have a lack of creativity, lack of access to that creative part of yourself? You tend to minimize things. I'm going to go over each one of these individually in a minute, but I want to give you the list first. You experience chronic exhaustion or physical ailments? Are you deliberately avoiding things or having difficulty listening? And I don't mean listening in this moment. I mean listening. Ongoing anger and cynicism. Inability to empathize, and that you have a tendency to numb out. Or engaged in any kind of addictions. Or grandiosity. Grandiosity is an inflated sense of your own importance. Now, I will tell you, when I did this training with Laura Lipsky, I think I've mentioned to this group, I used to work in a therapeutic preschool back east in Boston. And the children in our program were children with severe psychiatric, emotional, neurological issues. And I was in the preschool, I ran the preschool classroom. I was a therapeutic teacher. And so being bitten and being sworn at and being spit and catching chairs were just a part of my day, right? I was in the classroom for 10 years. I managed the program for 1 year. I would say, oh, this work does not affect me at all. I'm really good at it. And then not realizing that the fact that I was at the chiropractor twice a week for 10 years, that I didn't put that together, that was because my job was stressful. When I went to leave the program, leave the classroom, I thought, I can't leave. This is so embarrassing, but I can't see everybody's face. I'm going to say it anyway. I thought I can't leave because nobody could do it as well as I could. And I literally thought that. And as soon as Laura Lipsky said grandiosity, I was like, oh my gosh, that's me, right? And it was a really helpful process to have something be named for me that I didn't know what it was. And so that's part of my hope for you today, is that some things get named for you so you can identify that that's actually a symptom or a sign that that you're being impacted by the trauma that's around you. So let's look at this a little deeper. So in some situations, people tend to consider less extreme experiences of trauma as less real, right? They're like, well, that's not that bad. This is what's really bad, right? Do you guys know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, this child has this condition, but I have a child who has this condition, so that's not so bad. For some, a higher level of suffering is required to capture your attention. Minimizing, which is one of the symptoms and signs of secondary traumatic stress, can manifest in downplaying anything that does not fall in the most extreme category of hardship. So I don't know everybody's background in the world in this room, but I was, I went to graduate school and went right into working in special ed. So I only knew disability. I only knew issues. And so I was like, that's not a big deal because I've seen worse. I have a kid whose father shot his mother right in front of him. Can't top that one, right? And so minimizing just became a way of functioning for me, which I would not have known was a symptom, again, until it got named. Feelings of helplessness and hopelessness are really common in the world. Some of us can feel that in general. What I want you to be able to distinguish for some of these symptoms is, do you tend to roll this way always? And if you don't, and you have these symptoms, they're a sign of secondary trauma. And if you tend to roll this way, but they're just magnified, then it's impacting you also. So questions may come up for people about whether they're having an impact on their work. I think that's a pretty typical question for us to ask. I think when it goes to a range where it feels extreme, like I'm just not making a difference, I feel really overwhelmed, nothing is going to make this better, is what we're talking about in terms of helplessness and hopelessness. A sense that one can never do enough. For me, this is kind of goes with the grandiosity one. The feeling that one is not doing enough and should be doing more is a really common sign. Now, I work with many of you in this room, and many of you are leaders, and so I've worked with many of you as leaders. And we talk about this line of like, how do you stay within your skill and scope? And when you think you're not doing enough and you go above and beyond your skill and scope, I think that's when secondary trauma has hit you. That's an indication when you are overstepping your skill and scope. Chronic exhaustion or physical ailments are also other symptoms. This is pretty commonly known that stress impacts our bodies. We talked about a little bit about that yesterday, but secondary traumatic stress is a unique form of stress. Now, again, I want to differentiate this chronic exhaustion from burnout. Burnout is my load is too heavy. Chronic exhaustion related to secondary trauma is I can't make a difference. I'm exhausted. The inability to embrace complexity is also a sign. This shows up with really rigid expectations of people, and you need clear right or wrongs, and you tend to need to feel the need to choose sides. Now, as I was putting this training together, this particular one also might be how you roll. It might be how you're wired, right? You might be a black or white person. Gray is hard for you to live in. And so again, if that's how you are, right? If that's how you wire, that's how you've lived your life before you were in the presence of trauma, then that's not secondary traumatic stress. If that's not how you roll and you've gotten really rigid, that's an indication. That's a sign of secondary traumatic stress. This is another one that I experienced also, that being completely focused on one's job to the point where it becomes impossible to be present for other aspects of your life. Now, I want to differentiate secondary trauma here versus being a workaholic, right? Being a workaholic is a defense mechanism, right? I'm choosing to be at work versus other places, right? For some of us, our work world is more satisfying, or we feel more confident or competent there. And so we spend more time there. That is different than being 100% overly focused on your job because they need you so much so that you can't be present in in other parts of your life. There are some people who say, well, when I leave work, I can just leave it at the office and I go home. Many people who are experiencing secondary traumatic stress are not able to leave it at the office. They can't stop thinking about a particular child or a particular family. Now, some people would get defensive about that. They'd be like, well, of course I should think about them because they're having a hard time. The key here is that it's interfering with your functioning. It's interfering with your ability to be present in your own life. Feelings of guilt are another one that's associated with secondary trauma. Like, how can I enjoy myself when other people are suffering? That shows up for me too. I think that's a religious thing for me. I think that comes from something, Beth is nodding at that one. That's like in my lineage, right? Like we suffer really well. And so how can I be happy when so much pain and suffering is happening around us? So for me, because that's part of my wiring, that's just who I am. If it was on steroids, that would be because of the impact of my work. Anger and cynicism, also signs and symptoms. Now, I want to be really clear. Anger is not a problematic feeling. I know people call that a negative feeling. It actually holds value. It stimulates people to advocate for others, stimulates people to stand up for other people. The part where I want you to be thinking about anger and cynicism as problematic is how does your anger and your cynicism show up in your conversations with colleagues or in your humor? Like sarcastic and cynical humor is an indication that the anger is under your skin and out of your control, because it is seeping out in what we would say is inappropriate. Now, I grew up with sarcasm as a very common form of humor. It's actually not funny because sarcasm usually is at the expense of somebody else. And that is harmful. And so that is often a sign that there's something that's impacting that particular person. Losing track of moments in one's work because someone has significantly dysregulated them is a notable sign, right? Somebody said something, I've lost my mind. I am not paying attention for the next 15 minutes. So that's a dysregulation issue, which can be as a result of being in the presence of pain and suffering. That can be a sign. Now, some of us can listen to somebody and space out and miss the last 5 things they just said, that is also a sign, but that is also how some of us roll, right? For some of us, it's really hard to pay really close attention, right? If anybody's been trained by anybody who does brain stuff, right? How our brain works is we pay attention and then we space out, and then we pay attention and then we space out. We cannot pay attention 100% of the time. So the secondary traumatic stress part of this is when it is exacerbated or it's significant in terms of its impact on you. The inability to empathize or numbing or having difficulty experiencing or regulate your feelings is another sign. I want to just name this idea of numbing out as serving a number of different purposes, right? Numbing out really can numb the feelings, right? Either any kind of addiction, right? Drinking, watching TV, eating, any of those things actually numb our feelings. But what are the feelings it's trying to numb? Our feelings of hopelessness, our feelings of helplessness, our feelings of fear, of feeling out of control. Many years ago, I worked with a lot of directors over the years, many years ago, I used to recommend managers after a hard day of work to go home and watch TV because I wanted them to turn off that part of their brain. But then the watching the TV was the numbing, right? It numbs the feelings. Now, I am not a fan of people engaging in unhealthy strategies. Some unhealthy strategies help us cope, right? Remember we talked about yesterday that people who we are in contact with who use substances are using the substance to manage their underlying ACEs, their underlying trauma. And we get caught up in the behavior that they're engaging in as opposed to understanding it's a coping mechanism. So the same is true for us when we're experiencing secondary trauma. And then grandiosity, which I've mentioned. I don't know if there's anybody else in the room that has had this feeling, but I talked to so many of my friends back east, and maybe it's an East Coast thing, I don't know, where we just felt like, oh my gosh, we can't ever leave our jobs. How will the world go on without us? Now, some of us who have left our jobs before know that life will go on, right? But there is this lens that we are the be all and end all. I want to just say for some of us, for some of you, you're really good at your jobs and it will be a loss. But it's that sense that you are more important than anybody else is the grandiosity part of it. And this last sign or symptom is where I was talking about yesterday, that the signs of trauma are also the signs of secondary trauma. So often people experiencing STS, secondary traumatic stress, experience nightmares, sleep problems, intrusive thoughts related to the stories they've heard. Bearing witness to the suffering of others brings to light the dangers of the world, and they fear intense feelings of personal vulnerability. Although anxiety and depression are common symptoms separate from secondary trauma, when it's not your usual experience, they may also be an indication of secondary trauma. I've mentioned to you all several times, I'm an anxious person, right? That is not an unusual state for me. Some of you know this too. I'm also a worst case scenario person. So like danger, I see danger everywhere. Like when I was in the classroom, I didn't want to go out for recess because at recess, all I can see is danger, right? So like my colleagues literally asked me not to do recess duty because I stressed everybody out. So the reminder is that this is depending on how you normally roll. So based on all of those symptoms that I just described, this is a Laura Lipsky quote that I think I did yesterday and maybe even on Tuesday. that many of us build architecture around our hearts to defend against the pain and suffering around us. For some of us, the fortress gets bigger and the walls are higher. And in time, we find ourselves locked in by the very defenses we have constructed for our own protection. The reminder is that we create defense mechanisms to keep ourselves safe. Just like we were talking about yesterday with people who are experiencing trauma, the way in which they function in the world is a way that they protect themselves. The same is true for us. What's helpful is for us to recognize that we're engaging in these kinds of, or that these symptoms are part of our functioning now, so that we can do something differently. All life is interrelated. I've used this one every single day because Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday's conversations are completely connected. All life is interrelated. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one destiny affects all indirectly. This is literally how secondary trauma happens, because we are not separate from others. That when we are in the presence of other people's pain and sufferings, it impacts us. And then I will remind you that when you are impacted by it, you are also impacting others. This goes back to day one, where I said I want to make sure everybody takes care of their own emotional state, because we are part of every relationship we're in. And so this is a reminder that you can't get away from being impacted. You can absolutely do your best to prevent it, and there are absolutely ways to deal with it. But knowing that it happens is really important. Okay, so what do we do about this? This is a little clip that I'm going to show you guys. Most of you, this will not be familiar to you. Some of you, it will be familiar. This is a clip from the Bob Newhart show from many years ago. And if you don't know who Bob Newhart was, he was I don't know if he was a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist. And so this is just a little clip of Bob Newhart in his therapy session with a client. And there might be a commercial at the beginning, I don't know.
About the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say two words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Well, shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just two words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say two simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop it.
So clearly, that's meant for humor. But the point of it is that we can't just stop our feelings. We can't just say, I'm going to stop it. There are very concrete strategies that we engage in to manage our feelings and to manage our experiences. It is, to this day, one of my favorite clips of all time. And I think for many of us, we can relate to that because of the way in which we were brought up, which was your feelings, just stop your feelings. Your feelings are, I don't believe this was the intention behind it, but we were sort of brought up with feelings don't matter, right? Which meant we stuffed a bunch of feelings. And so I'm going to present some ways for us to, some strategies for us to attend to secondary trauma that may be new for you as a person who tends to grow up with that kind of framework. And so just do the best you can to be as open as possible to these concepts and see if anything applies. I will say this again because now I'm seeing more people in the room. Many of you already know these strategies. These are Laura Lipsky strategies, and many of you have attended the same trainings that I did. My hope is that maybe one of them you hear a little bit differently today, or it seems to fit for you. So what we know when we're experiencing secondary traumatic stress is that we are still in that reactive part of our brains. We are not in our thinking part of our brains. We are in reactivity. And when we are in that state of mind, we're not as effective in our work, which is why we're having these conversations about strategies around secondary trauma so that you can be as effective as possible in your work. We talked about this yesterday when we talked about trauma. Our stress response system is on high alert when we are in our states of secondary traumatic stress. Our own stress response system is on high alert, and our actions tend to be more reactive versus reflective. And what we're trying to do is to get back to this thinking part of our brain as quickly as possible so that we can be effective. It might not happen in the moment we're with a family. It might happen 3 days later when we're in supervision with our supervisor. But the idea is to be able to develop some strategies to be able to regulate ourselves. And when we're talking about these strategies, the ones that I've learned through Laura Lipsky, they're really about reflection. And before I get into those, I do want to name all of the other ones that most people know, and I will say most of us forget, which is making sure we eat, and we eat nutritious food. Making sure you get enough sleep. Making sure that you drink water, right? For some of us, we have strategies that are like, I refer to it as self-talk, where we talk ourselves through something. That's a strategy. So most of the strategies we use when we are overwhelmed are similar to the, I want you to know those strategies work here too. But for our time together, we're just going to take it a little bit deeper and we're going to go into a place of reflection. So inquiry is the first step. And the first question I want you to ask yourself is, why am I doing the work that I'm doing? If there are any leaders in this group who know about Simon Sinek, he does some work around leadership. And one of the things he will always say is, you need to find your why. Now, he's not talking about that in the context of secondary trauma. But when we're talking about being so impacted by the pain and suffering around us, I want people to be able to reconnect to why they do this work. Many of you know me as a person who does reflective supervision. And when I hear stories about the pain and suffering that are impacting people, I will often say, why are you still in your job? And I'm not asking that because I think people should quit, but I'm asking that question strategically so that people can say, I love my work. I love my work. The reason why I show up every day is I believe in what we do. And I'm going to tell you, the minute you say that statement, you are no longer in your reactive part of your brain and you are back in your frontal cortex. And not only are you back in your frontal cortex, you're back in your own heart. And when you can say the reason why you're doing the work you're doing, it helps you be able to figure out, what do I need in this moment? I just need to take a break. Can I have the afternoon? I just need to go sit somewhere quietly. I need to listen to some music. Those are some of the typical regulation strategies that we use. But to begin with, you need to get to your why. If the reason why you're doing this work is because you need a job, I'm going to tell you, there are other jobs you can do that are less stressful. So there's a reason why you're here. And once you can name that for yourself, your feet are on the ground again. I will tell you, you'll need to answer that question again and again and again. There are people in this room who I've literally asked that question a dozen times to over the years. Second strategy. We talked about this on Tuesday, right? Whatever a difficult relationship or dynamic at work that you have. Asking yourself, have I been here before? What is the pattern here? This is how all 3 days are connected, you guys. What we talked about Tuesday is setting the stage for this. Have I been in this pattern before? And if so, what is it that I need to learn? We are 100% in reflective mode here when we're asking ourselves these questions. This is very different than making sure you eat nutritious food. That is a fantastic strategy. This gets underneath it. So have I been here before? Have I been here before means, is there a pattern of functioning, of relating that I am unaware of? That once I'm aware of it, I can make some decisions about. Number 3, my actions and my choices. Many, many years ago, I was in my 20s. I used to be so annoyed. Oh my gosh, see, you all know how annoyed I get. I was so annoyed when people would say to me, you know, you have choices. And I'd be like, you have no idea. I have no choice. I'm stuck in my misery, right? I didn't know any better, right? But what I really understand is that even in the midst of a really difficult and painful situation, we have a choice. Right? Do you remember the quote I showed on Tuesday from Viktor Frankl, who said between stimulus and response is a space? Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. And he's making choices about how he handles situations. So, oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. So the reflection is, are my actions and my choices aligned with my integrity? Is what I'm doing, how I'm acting, working for me? How does it work for me? Why does it work for me? For some of you, you might be easy to anger. And you're like, well, this anger is working for me. It's fueling movement. It's fueling activism. For some people, they tend to withdraw. And is that working for you? Yes, it's keeping me safe. It's keeping me from getting hurt. But I want you to be able to answer how your actions are working for you or not working for you. Number 4, I've used this image 3 days now. Where is your attention? Where are you putting your focus? What we put our attention on grows. Where are you putting your attention? Are you focusing only on the pain and suffering of this family? Or can you also see their strengths? Are you only focusing on the lack of funding that we have for our programs? Or are you looking at the amount of work that can be done given what you've got? When we bring attention to this, we begin to be able to shift perspective, and we make choices about where our attention is. But what's required is to be aware of where our attention is. You all know me. I'm a glass half empty person. I will always look at, why don't we have enough funding? Why are families not getting this? Why, like, that's my first line of thinking. And the work is to shift to say, well, given what the funds we have, we do really amazing work. So how we use our attention matters significantly. They say as a trainer, you should never put this many words on a slide, but it's a whole quote. So the whole quote is on the slide. I'm going to read it with you. You can read along with me if you want. There is great power in understanding that we can change the way we interact with circumstances in our lives simply by being intentional and about where we put our focus. Dan Siegel, some of you know Dan Siegel. He's the hand model of the brain guy. And Jack Kornfield, who does a lot of mindfulness work, one a scientist and the other a Buddhist monk, are beginning to teach this as they combine the latest in brain physiology research with the oldest of mindfulness practices. They explain that the way you pay attention activates parts of your brain in very specific ways, and that this brain firing actually leads to structural changes in the brain itself. We talked about this in terms of Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, right? Relationships and experiences impact the brain. But they're adding the layer of literally what we attend to changes our brain. In other words, there's a real likelihood that with time and practice, a temporary, intentionally created mindfulness state will become a lasting mental trait. However small the ways in which we bring awareness to where we're putting our focus may seem, they can lead to large changes in our experience of life. William James, a pioneering American philosopher and psychologist who was trained as a medical doctor, said, "My experience is what I agree to attend to." It was a whole lot of words. You're never supposed to read a slide when you do a training. This is a piece of what we've been talking about Tuesday and Wednesday, and it is essential when we're talking about strategies for you all to manage your secondary trauma. Putting your attention on something has the potential to shift things. I know many people in this room are engaging in mindfulness strategies. The part about mindfulness strategies is the more you practice them, the more your brain is wired for mindfulness practices. The more your brain is wired for mindfulness practices, the more automatic it becomes. Number 5. Laura Lipsky will say this. I remember it used to I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck go up when she would say this, because she would say, it's a choice to do what we do. And then she'd say, it's a sacred privilege. I don't know about you, but I agree with that 100%. What we do in the world is amazing. And not everybody can do it. And it's a sacred privilege to be able to do what we do. What she talks about, though, is being able to realize that you're actually choosing this job. So she'll talk about what your plan B is. What is your plan B? Because if you feel like I can't do anything else than this, then you don't have a choice. And what she wants us to realize is that we have a choice to do this job or not to do this job. We all could work somewhere else. And so I want people to realize this is a strategy to respond to the secondary traumatic stress, is being able to realize that you have a choice. And if you weren't here, what else would you do? Many of you know this. I would work in a bookstore, because in a bookstore, I don't need to talk to people or hear people's stories. I can just read the books I want to read. And still, I've never worked in a bookstore. I've always done this kind of work because I believe it's a sacred privilege. Your 6th strategy. Connection. As we all know, we talked about this in terms of a buffer around trauma, that relationships are a potential protective factor against trauma. It is not different for secondary trauma. Relationships can and do prevent sliding deeper in the hole, shall we say. So I want people to be able to answer the question, who are your people? Where do you go to feel good and refuel? When you're up against it, who helps you feel better? I have a number of people in my life that I really care about. They are not all who I would turn to refuel. Who is the person or who are the people that help you refuel? And of course, you're not going to need to tell me this, but I want you to be able to tell yourself the answer to that. Compassion. Compassion actually is one of those feeling states that secretes the bonding hormone oxytocin that actually really feels good. Now, it can feel contraindicated here when we're talking about people who are of service to others on a regular basis. We're maybe think of ourselves as being compassionate in those moments. But when we are experiencing secondary traumatic stress, remember the signs and symptoms. We're feeling hopeless and helpless. We're feeling angry. We're numbing ourselves, any of those potential things. And one of the strategies to counterbalance that is to get back into our hearts. And so how do you find that space? What is that space for you that drops you in your heart immediately where you care about the other? Some people here know this about me. I have a learning disability. As soon as I think about a child in a classroom with a learning disability where the teacher does not get them, my eyes well up with tears and I'm immediately in my heart because I feel for that child. That's the feeling I want you to think about. Not the feeling of like, I need to save the world. It's just that feeling of compassion for someone. Your 8th strategy. I'm thinking of Katrina for this one because she talked about this on Monday. Finding balance. I know some of the people in this room, you don't know what this word means. I know that. That is one of the things that I want you to think about as a strategy to counterbalance secondary trauma. Is there such a thing as life outside of work? For years, I did not know that. I worked 7 days a week by choice. What would that balance be for you? There's 115 people in the room. Balance looks differently for each one of you. What is that? And my hope is we're at number 8 and we're going to keep going, that you're getting that these strategies are about reflection and awareness. The usual strategies that get taught around self-care are very concrete and less reflective. This gets to underneath it. Moving energy. Did anybody see the number 9, moving energy move? Wasn't that super cute? I spent like 20 minutes on that. Thank you for noticing it. So I'm going to tell a story, and some of you were literally in the training with Laura Lipsky with me at this period of time. This was Laura Lipsky training 2, for those of you who were in the training with me. At that point in time of that training, I was going through something extremely difficult in my personal life. The issues are irrelevant, but I was literally struggling just to get out of bed and show up, right? And so I'm showing up at this training because I have to show up at this training. And this woman is saying stuff. This is training number 2, so I already like her. But training number 2 is like put stuff into practice. And she says, all right, what's everybody's plan for exercise between now? I'm looking at you, Jackie. I think I was sitting with you in this training. What's your plan for exercise? And I'm not going to swear, but I did swear in my head. I was like, this woman is nuts. She has no idea. I am barely getting out of bed. And even when I'm out of bed, I don't like to exercise. What in the world is she talking about? Right? I was so resistant to this. I'm pretty resistant to exercise in general, but she said the point of exercise is moving energy. And it was all of a sudden like a light bulb went off, because I'd had a pit in my stomach for like weeks at this point. And I understood that what I wanted was that pit in my stomach to go away. I wasn't going to change the situation. The outcome wasn't going to be any different, but I wanted that pit in my stomach to go away. And the more she talked about it, the more it made sense to me. This idea of moving energy, it attends to that feeling. So for those of you who are in the presence of pain and suffering, and you've got an aching heart or a stomach ache or your back hurts or whatever it is, I want you to hold on to this concept of moving energy as a way to attend to your secondary trauma. Breathing, walking, drinking water, laughing are all ways in which we move energy. Is this making sense to you all? Okay. I mentioned this yesterday and the day before. Laughter is like my favorite strategy of all times. And so we're just going to take a moment for that. Okay, I'm going to do it again. I don't know. I just feel like there's nothing better than a baby laughing. It just what does it for me. So I should have said, take note of how you feel, and then watch that, and then take note of how you feel. And I missed that opportunity. But really all it takes is a moment of laughter to shift something. That's really all it takes. So again, with this idea of moving energy, I'm going to invite you all to do some movement with me. And so let me tell you how this is going to go, and then you decide how you want to participate in it. So I'm going to play a song, and it's called My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. So for all of you elderly folks in the room, you know when I'm talking about Mary Becker. You're not elderly, but you are in my genre of age. You know this song. Some of you have never heard the song before, and it doesn't matter, because the words of the song will be on the screen. And this is what I want people to do if you want to. As the song plays, every time you hear a word that starts with the letter B, if you're sitting down, I want you to stand up. And if you're standing up, I want you to sit down. Okay, so it's a movement activity. If you are with a chair that is rolling, be really careful. I don't want the chair to roll away from you. If this is physically uncomfortable for you, don't stand up and sit down and do your arms. Okay? And if that is uncomfortable for you, just hang out with us and think along with us. Are the directions clear for people? Okay, good. Seriously, if you've got a chair that rolls, be really careful. Like move your chair up against the wall so it doesn't move. Because what you're literally going to be doing is standing up and sitting down rather rapidly. Okay? Let me just check for 1 second. Annalie, are we good? Okay, great. Okay, get ready. It goes fast.
My bunny lies over the ocean. My bunny lies over the sea.
So stay standing or stay sitting?
My bunny lies over the
Here goes fast.
ocean. So bring back my bunny to me.
Fast is just popping up and down.
Bring back, oh bring back my bunny to me, to me. Bring back, oh bring back my bunny to me.
Okay, there's a little reprieve here, so you can catch your breath. For those of you, I'm watching people moving. Okay, get ready. Here it comes again.
Bring back, oh bring back my Bonnie to me, to me. Bring back, oh bring back my Bonnie to me.
Well done, everybody. Well done, everybody. Why in the world did I just do that? Does anybody have a clue? Moving energy, people. Moving energy. Does anybody feel different now than you did a minute and 40 seconds ago? Does anybody's knees hurt? Is anybody out of breath? Did anybody laugh? Did anybody go like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to be standing or sitting? My hope is that didn't make you feel bad about yourself, that you just thought it was funny. That was a minute and 40 seconds. Part of what I want you to get about moving energy is it doesn't take long. So for those of you who are thinking, oh my God, these strategies are so intense, look, a minute and 40 seconds. That little giggling babies was 20 seconds. Lots of people think self-care strategies around secondary trauma are like, I need to go on vacation. I'm a fan of going on vacation. That's lovely. But what do you do when you can't go on vacation? Or take the afternoon off? Number 10, gratitude. Gratitude, I feel like, is really much more a part of people's way of functioning these days. So I'm going to take you back to the day of the training when Laura Lipsky was giving us these, and I was annoyed that she was telling me to exercise, but then understood. Then she says gratitude. Now you can imagine my state of mind because I am miserable and my life has just fallen apart. And this woman is telling me to be grateful. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me, lady, right? You've really got to be kidding. And I don't know if anybody, Jackie, if you remember this, she said, there's always something to be grateful for. You can be grateful you don't have the flu right now. And I burst out laughing. And I was like, oh my gosh, there is always something to be grateful for. And so it was a really helpful shift of perspective because when we are in the trenches, it feels like it's hard to access, getting above water, right? I just mixed two metaphors that don't make sense, but you get what I mean, right? We're trying to get air. I said this to somebody recently and he's like, I've got COVID. That's not really funny. And I was like, well, it's a good thing you don't have COVID and the flu, right? Like, it's really, how do you reach for something to be grateful for? For many of us, that's quite easy for us to do. When we are in a dysregulated state, it is harder. Number 11. So here is what's something I want you to very concretely think about adding into your routine. Not that I don't want you to do the other ones. Is I want you to think about a daily practice that you can tolerate doing, that it's a morning and an evening thing. And the day starts off with, what is my intention for today? Now, I don't know if anybody in the room is familiar with intentions. It's just not so much a wish or a dream for the day, but you're just putting some energy into something for the day. Now, when I first learned about intentions, I was like, oops, I just lost that. Do you see the slide? Okay, thank you. I was like, I'm going to have an awesome day. Now, I don't ever have an awesome day. I can have a great day, but I seldom have awesome days because that's not the lens I use, right? But the idea I want you to think about when you're putting your intention in place is something like, my intention is to be as present as possible for myself and for others. My intention for today is just to do the best I can. My intention for today is to show up with all of who I am. It's something like that, right? Now, the second one I feel like is a little, maybe for me, it feels a little more important because I think we tend to take on stuff and we go to bed and it ruminates for us. And so what I want you to think about is at the end of the day, what can I put down? I'm a very visual person, so I literally think about, there's a situation or there's a family or there's a person. I will literally in my head picture I'm taking that person very gingerly and putting them on the shelf. I will come back to them, but they are no longer in my head. Now, some of you are like, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Or I've tried that and that doesn't work. I'm going to tell you, most of these strategies won't work until they work. They are not going to be a miraculous cure on day one. This is a practice. This is an intentional way of approaching, attending to the pain and suffering that's around us. At the end of the day, what can I put down? And I don't mean literally like, what can you leave in the office? I mean that thing that stays in your head. So starting your day with something and ending your day with something. I've shown this clip, this slide each day also. Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. We are all part of this web. The families we work with, the children we're serving have an impact on us, and we have an impact on others. And so the first question I'm going to ask you to ask yourself is, how will you take care of your part of the web? If we are all connected, you are just as responsible for the web as I am. I have Kara Bauer in my head now. Good enough. Good enough. This is not about beating yourself up for not doing it well one day or every day. It is just about making some choices about being intentional. If, in fact, this resonates for you. For some of you, it might not. The second question I want you to ask yourself is, I refrain from doing harm to the web by. So I swear, and that's not a lot of people don't like that. It's actually one of the reasons why I like Laura Lipsky so much, because she would swear. But I feel like my swearing sometimes harms the web. And so I sometimes refrain from swearing because I don't want to harm the web. I'm actually doing that for others because I'm a fan. I like to swear. It makes me feel good. But I'm doing that because I don't want to cause harm. The next reflection I want you to think about in your daily practice is, who are you struggling with right now that you can see as a teacher? And what I mean by that is, what can you learn from that dynamic, from that relationship? Now, I will tell you from my own experience, when you are deeply in it, it's hard to answer this question. So if you are still angry and you're still hurt and you're still upset, put this question down for a while. It's once you've come to a more regulated place that you can contemplate this. Because when you're still angry and hurt and frustrated, you're still in your reactive part of your brain. And to be able to answer this question, you need to be in your frontal cortex. And how are you moving energy through you? Some of you, I know you walk every single day. For some of you, I know you run every day. For some of you, I know on the weekends you go mountain biking or you go skiing. I want you to think about how you move energy through you every day. And then where am I putting my focus, and can I shift perspective? So this daily practice of reflection is putting several of those strategies I just listed for you into one daily reflection. If these are helpful for you, take them, use them. If you need to tweak them, tweak them. If they don't resonate for you, let it go. Don't do it. These are all reflections that are offered to you as options of ways of managing what comes up for you based on the pain and suffering that you're dealing with around you. If this is new to you, I just say pick one of these things that I said and give it a try. Just pick one. But keep the list nearby, because at some point you might be interested in another. So next I want to talk about the strategies from an organizational perspective. What I just talked about were individual strategies for people to engage in, to attend to the feelings that come up for you based on your work with people who've experienced pain and suffering. This is about organizational wellness. And these are just a few. The list could go on and on. So here are some actionable strategies for anybody who's in a leadership position who wants to feel good about themselves or wants to add something. If you're fostering a culture that supports staff to do well, to feel well and be well, trauma-informed training is number one. Check, people were here yesterday, you're good. Provide staff with the tools to build resilience while supporting children and families who've experienced trauma. I feel like just about all of these falls under the category of reflective supervision. Establishing clear boundaries. We talked about this on Tuesday. Victor Bernstein says, what is his quote? I'm not gonna be able to pull it up, but that one of the difficulties or one of the things that it can impact us related to secondary trauma is not having clear boundaries. It's very easy to overstep our boundaries. We need to stay within our skill and our scope. Defined work hours and realistic expectations to prevent burnout. Consistent and effective communication on boundaries empowers home visitors to prioritize their well-being. Structured self-care opportunities within the workday reinforces the organization's commitment to staff resilience. I'm just thinking of people I know in the corporate world. Like they have a nap, my niece she's an architect, they'd have a nap room. People could go to the room and take a nap in the middle of the day. She used it all the time. Reflective supervision, transparent communication about organizational changes, expectations, resources, fosters trust and emotional safety. Regular check-ins, team meetings, one-on-one reflective conversations provide opportunities to reduce isolation and encourage collaboration. Can you embed these in your policies and procedures in terms of supporting well-being? Referrals to EAP programs. Policies that encourage mental health days and flexible scheduling demonstrate a commitment to staff care. Embedding these supports into workplace culture allows home visitors to thrive emotionally and professionally, enhancing their ability to serve children effectively. This is not just for each person, this is for systems. And if your system doesn't provide this, then you go to the individual part. And if you are a leader and want to take any of these examples from Laura Lipsky, think about embedding them in your program. I know there are some programs that literally use Laura Lipsky's trauma stewardship book as a way to function. So is that something that would be interesting or helpful to you? We do not see things as they are, we see them as we are. When we are in states that are reactive based on our secondary traumatic stress, we are not seeing things as clearly as we could. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This is self-regulation. between the moment that we are impacted by a family's pain and suffering and we open our mouth or we do something, that is our space to make a decision about what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and or what do we need. This particular quote is relevant for Tuesday, Wednesday, and today. So grab some paper and we'll do our closing reflection. If you've already got your paper, great. And if you don't have it and you want to grab it, grab a piece of paper. And I think the majority of you have been here for all 3 days. And if you haven't been here for all 3 days, that's fine. But what I'm wanting to do in this closing reflection is to provide you the opportunity to have found value in the time. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday were 3 separate days, but in my mind, they were 100% connected. Each day had built on the one before, and day 3 connected all of them together. And so first question I want you to reflect on is, what are 3 things that you're going to take away from our time together this week? 3 things that you found valuable, or 3 aha moments, because I want you to have found value in the time. And then I want you to write 2 things you feel validated for, things you're already doing, because I want you to have learned something new or taken something away from our time, but I also want you to get you're doing this. There are parts of this you are already doing. And then the third question I want you to respond to is, what is one thing that you're going to put into practice as a result of our time together? And that can be from Tuesday, Wednesday, or today. But take a few minutes to jot down your answers to this. My commitment when I do trainings like this is that the time is valuable. So I want you to claim your value. You just spent 6 hours on this. And if you're in a room with other people, this is really a private reflection, unless you want it to have a conversation. So everybody's going to take away something different. Okay, let's just take one more minute. So wherever you get to is fine. And if you want to save the questions and finish them later, that's fine too. Okay. So what are your thoughts, your comments, your questions? I'm going to take the PowerPoint away. Anything from your reflections that you want to share? Anything that you want to know more about? Anything that was particularly helpful? This is our last time together to sort of unpack things. So, Mary.
Hi there. So it was really helpful for me, Mara, to think about reframing my own frustrating moments. As you had talked about, like I like to be on time, things like that. And so it's hard for me when other people aren't, but then to frame it, gosh, I wonder what happened. I hope
Mhm.
they're okay. I really appreciated hearing that. It's helpful for me.
Yeah, good, good. So Beth says the physical symptoms part was really helpful. Yeah, good. It was really useful. Good. Great 3 days of information and learning. Good. Great. Anybody want to unmute and share anything that came up for them, or oh, people are still in the chat. I got to look over here. Great 3 days of information learning. I want more training like this. I learned so much. Good. I'm reminded this is a journey of learning. I continue to learn something new each time I hear this information. Thank you. Good, Jackie. Good. Jackie was with me in the training that day.
Mara, I was just going to say that the three things are a value of time that we've spent together was just kind of doing a reflection on myself and
Mhm.
how I react to certain situations.
Good.
And then also remembering, one takeaway for me would be being responsible for my own thoughts and reactions.
Yeah. Yeah. They're big takeaways, Kathleen. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that this is my lens, as a trainer, is that you learn by doing self-reflection. That's how I feel like growth happens, right? You could get this information online, right? You could Google this, you could read a book, but being able to take the time to actually think about how it fits in your life, that's how change happens. Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Oh, stuff's happening in the chat again. Um, okay, that was Jackie. I agree. More of these trainings, please. Good. This has been great. Thank you so much. I feel like we learned a lot about me and my perception. I feel like that's my mission in life. It's for people to learn about themselves. I valued self-reflections, videos, and topics. I value self-care more, and questions asked I want to put into practice, all of it, but especially taking care of moving energy. Yes. I'll say it just again, and this isn't to you in particular, Christy. If you are new to this process, take it slow. Because if you do 100% of it and it's not going quickly enough for you, you will lose interest. So pick one or two things that feel like you can do and build. Yeah, beautiful. Hi, Diane. For me, the reminder that toxic positivity is just as bad as toxic negativity was a big one. That's my lens. I don't know. You agree, Diane? Yeah.
I agree very much, and I think that was a part of my upbringing was there was a lot of toxic positivity. Oh no, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to
Yeah.
be fine. It's not always fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And we will get through it, right? Like that's the part that doesn't get said in that toxic positivity. Yeah. It's good to see you, Diane. Vanessa says, I'm an especially empathetic person and appreciate the suggestion on how to take better care of myself. And I really like the emphasis on taking the power of that space between stimulus and your reaction. So true. Yes. The song by Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror. Yes. 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 Trauma is in the, Rachel says, trauma is in the eye of the beholder. Loved The listening scale, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. Yes, which I hear a lot in the work we do. I appreciate getting asked about validation with the second question today. What are we already doing? Good, 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 good. Juana's here. Hi, Juana. Thank you so much for the information and the reminder to practice self-reflection and self-care. Yes. I think it's, for some of us who've been around for a long time, it's really easy to forget to do what we know to do. Right? Or our practice gets watered down and we just do this one thing. And it's like, well, is there something I need to do differently in my practice? Right? For some of us, this isn't new. And so is there something you want to do differently because of what we just talked about? Yeah. Anastasia says, I need to drink more water. Yeah. Really want you to drink more water. Yes. Yeah. You could just put stuff in the water. That's how you make it. That's what you do. What else?
I really liked well, there's a lot of things I liked, but the thing that somebody I'm struggling with, how can they be my teacher?
Mm,
And, it's just a reframing from being, feeling negative
mhm,
to saying, with that compassion and like, what are they going through and why
mhm.
are they acting this way?
Yeah,
And so it's just a reminder, because
yeah.
it's not good to get caught up in that. And there's something currently in my family going on where I have some negative feeling. And if I reframe what that
Yes,
person their life and their trauma and all that.
yes,
So it was a great
yes.
reminder. Yeah.
It's a great reminder.
And it feels good. It
It's better.
feels so much better.
It feels better. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. Many of you have heard me say this, and some of you know me just in general. I do this kind of work for a living, and I struggle with the reframing on a regular basis, right? Like I teach reframing literally every single day of my life. I'm talking about it, and it's really difficult to do. And I think the last thing you said, Helen, is really important. It feels better when you have reframed. I know that a lot of you already know this about me, but my mother was mentally ill, and all she had to do was say good morning to me, and I would lose my mind, right? It didn't take much, right? And I would literally say, oh my gosh, I teach self-regulation and I can't even regulate in this moment because it feels horrible to be reactive. And at the end of it, I'd be like, tomorrow I'm going to do it differently, right? I'm going to try tomorrow not to react in 1 second. Maybe I'll wait 15 seconds, right? Like it's just doing the best you can. And because it feels better. Yeah. Yeah. Other comments people have as we wrap up our final day together? Helpful? People feel like Laura?
Yes, I just wanted to kind of extend what somebody said yesterday about the smile.
Mm,
Someone told me that even in the phone, people can perceive if you're upset or if you're smiling. So it's very important to smile when you're on the phone because people can perceive.
oh, yes.
And
Yes.
then also, I wanted to say that I feel guilty when I'm having fun. We had a loss in my family, and just to see my brother suffering, I feel bad, like I am having fun, and I never related.
I'm hearing
Um,
Naomi in Spanish.
so I never related with trauma, So it was very interesting to find out that I need to work in that. I don't know
Mm.
how, but I will find out. And then
Well,
another thing, go ahead.
I was just going to say awareness is the first part, right? That's like, if
Yeah.
it was so easy, we'd all be so much healthier, right? But the first part is the awareness of it, Laura. Yeah, good.
Yeah. And then another thing, I don't know if you guys hear about the mirror law. That means that whatever we see in another person, if something is bothering us, it's because we have it.
Mhm.
So that's the way we can find out what we have to work on.
Yes,
So it's just a
yes,
comment.
yes. I don't know if were you here day one on Tuesday, Laura?
Part of, yes, I got
This-
here a little bit late.
There was a quote that was exactly that, is that whatever irritates us about other people tells us something about ourselves. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Very, very helpful.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you were here. What about others? Questions? This is your last chance to get, not your last chance. We all live in the same state. But for our time together, if there's something you wanted to get clarification on, something I said that wasn't clear, or just a comment you want to make.
Mara, I'm sorry I'm not on camera today. This is Katrina.
Hi,
Thank you
Katrina.
so much for these 3 days. They've truly been impactful to me on so many levels. But I just want to say, if the whole world could just see this 3 or 6 hour training series, I think it would make a world of difference. So thank you so much. I
Yes.
truly mean that. Truly mean that.
Thank you, Katrina. We just were saying that before we logged on. That was really funny. That was literally what we were saying. Yeah, thank you, Katrina. I'm glad you were here. Erica says, can I read something? Sure. And
Hi.
more of these. Yes, Erica, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Erica. Um, I just wanted to add up to what everyone is saying. This is a great training. I really enjoy it. And there's one page that I really been reading a book that's called The Mastery of Love. And it says this little part, and I would love to read it. When we are in a relationship, any type of relationship, we only have control over half of our relationship, or half is the only part we can change. And it's the only part that we can control. But we always try to control the other half, and that's why we suffer.
Yes.
We need to focus on our own half, on our own reactions and our own emotions and our own behavior. We need to take responsibility for our own half and let go of the need to control the other half. When we take the responsibility of our own half, we start to see that the other ones who create our own drama, we're the ones who create our own conflict.
Mm.
So we can start to let go of our need to be right, our need to control, and our need to judge. We can start to see that other person is not responsible for our happiness or unhappiness. We are the ones who are responsible for our own happiness or unhappiness.
That's beautiful. Who was the author of that, Erica?
This is Miguel Ruiz.
Oh, okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. I bet a lot of people are familiar with him. Yeah, that's beautiful. You know, one of the things that, thank you so much for reading that. The thing that I really, I like about doing trainings like this is because I think what Erica just read, I think we want that, right? Like we're aspiring for that. And there are some concrete strategies to get there. And I think that's the part that sometimes we forget. It's like, I just want to wish that to happen, right? But the truth is there's work that goes into what you just read. And people need to agree to do the work or not, right? I mean, it's valuable, but it's not easy. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. All right, I feel like that's a good note, Maya.
Yeah, awesome. That's fabulous to hear all the sharing. So just a couple of announcements before we go here. One is a few people have emailed and asked, are we going to be providing certificates for this training? The answer is yes. It takes us a while to do this because we have to go through all of the records of the Zoom calls to figure out who was here which days, et cetera, et cetera. So we are asking for a little grace period. We will have those out by April 1st. Please don't email us asking where it is. They're coming. Cruz and I will be working on this, okay? So you will get 3 different certificates if you were here for all 3 days, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing is that Mara and I have worked together to be able to provide 3 hours of follow-up to these trainings so that you can, and she won't be training, there won't be a format or an agenda. It will just be a space where you can come and listen, ask questions, get them answered, ask for help with strategies, a way to actually take this from your head to your heart and be able to implement it in your work. So you will get an email with that information too, but it'll be, there's 3 Tuesdays. They're not consecutive because the college is on break one of those weeks. So March 18th, April 1st, and April 8th. We'll let you know. We'll give you the Zoom link. You're welcome to hop on. There will not be certificates or hours for that. It's just to help you with the integration of the information and really bringing it further into your work. Trying to think if there was anything else about that I needed to say. Mara? No? Okay. So once again, I just want to thank everybody for putting aside the time, for showing up, for coming, for participating and sharing your thoughts and feelings about this. Firstborn and More is so happy to be able to provide this to home visitors in the state. And I see lots of people in the chat saying more like this. So we will work on that. And now that you've been here, you'll be on our email list. If you don't want to be on our email list, you can unsubscribe. And the other thing is that we have been recording all of these sessions. They will be up. It will also take a little while to get them up, but we will send that information too, so that you can find them on our YouTube channel and go back and listen to them again, or pick up pieces that you missed the first time around. The other piece of that is that we will be sending you a short evaluation. It will be a form where you will choose things. We would really appreciate it if you would fill that out. It helps so much to in addition to what you've put in the chat, to hear what you have to say, what worked for you, what didn't, what would you like to see, all of those kinds of things. And it helps for our funding too, because this is with a very generous grant from the Brindle Foundation. So helps for us to be able to let them know what we did with the money that they gave us. So any questions at all on anything that I just said that I can clarify for you right now? Nope. You can always email us at Firstborn and More. You're welcome, Diane. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank Naomi and Annalie too. Thank you for doing the interpretation.
We had awesome interpretation this week from Naomi and her fantastic crew, Annalie, Amparo, and Sandra. It really just feels so good and so much more equitable to be able to provide in both languages. So thank you so much, guys.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.
I think that's it.